right, want to know the lighting setup that makes me the most money? You're in luck, because that's what I'm going to show you today. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and I'm a portrait and fashion photographer, but I have actually been working for more than 2 decades. I'm based in New York City, and my clients are vastly varying. I shoot everything from fake eyelashes to shooting promos for hospital campaigns, you name it. And even though I shoot a wide range of different subject matter, it tends to be that there's one setup that makes me the most income over and over and over again. And so that's what I'm going to take you through today. Now, by the way, before we dive into this, I wanted to let you know that I actually have a class called Money Making Photography Setups. In that class, I take you through not just this, but dozens more. So definitely want to check that out, and I have a link in the description below. The setup I'm going to be shooting gives you a broad, soft light, which is not only great for flattering the skin in camera, but it's also really great if you were shooting a group of people, because you can have 2, 3, 5, even 10 people side by side, and everyone is going to get even illumination. I'm going to show you what you can do with 1 light, 3 lights, and 4 lights. Now, typically what I do is I set up all 4 lights to give me the variability. I figure out which look the client likes best, and then we lock that in, and that's what we do throughout the entirety of the shoot. Let's begin with our main light, because this is a variable that doesn't change. I'm going to be using a Westcott Scrim Jim 8x8 foot. So if you've never used a scrim before, basically what it is, it's a frame with diffusion material in the front of it. And diffusion material is basically the same material in the front of a softbox. And so one of the rules of lighting is the larger the light source is compared to the size of the subject, the softer the light. So what that translates to is big light or big light close equals soft light. And so if you have an 8x8 foot scrim, that is a huge soft light source. And so when you are photographing a subject, not only does that give you flattering light on the skin, but it also is going to give you just this big wall of light, like I said, which is great for photographing groups. So the scrim that we have here, the diffusion actually can come in different stops, different strengths. How much does it soften and smooth out the light? How much does it cut out the light? The one that I use most often is a 1-stop diffusion. Okay, so that is just a modifier, but how do I light that light source? What you'll notice over here to the left-hand side of the frame is I have a single strobe, just 1 strobe, and there's nothing on it at all. It is just bare bulb. And what that does is that light hits the scrim, it spreads out, and it gives me my soft light source. Now, sometimes if I am photographing a large group, I might add up 2 of these strobes, 1 on either side. And the reason I do that is because I want to evenly fill up the scrim, because that makes it even more soft. So where we're going to begin is large light source, a scrim, flat into my subject. I want to show you what that looks like, because even if you only had 1 light, it already looks beautiful. All right, let me take a quick test. I'm just gonna have you strike a pose and keep it there for me. What I want you to notice about this set is she is lit evenly, pretty much head to toe, which means this is great for catalog, lookbook, anything where I'm trying to show off the clothing. It is super, super versatile. Now, as a note, the background that I'm using here is Savage Universal Bone. It's basically like an off-white that's a little bit warm, but it's not so warm that it's distracting. And it's really beautiful when you're photographing subject wearing brown clothes, beige clothes, white clothing. It just kind of warms up the image. And this is something that you'll see very popularly right now in commercial photography. Yeah, I change this all the time depending on the client. Recently, I used a teal background because that was representative of the brand's colors. All right, so 1 light, already gorgeous. Now what we're going to do is optionally add 2 more lights to illuminate the background. So I don't think the background needs to be lit, but I want to have that control. So let's say that you're photographing this and maybe the client wants the background to be a little bit brighter. They want a little bit more of a higher key shot. I've added 1 light on either side. And by the way, the strobes that I'm using today are all ProPhoto D2s. Now the reason I like these is that they're vary in power quite a bit. I use 1,000 watt-second strobes, and they have a really fast recycling time. So especially with commercial work, if I have the subject moving and dancing around, they're going to be able to keep up. So let's talk again about those background lights. So I have D2s all the way around, and I have small white umbrellas. What they're doing is the light's bouncing into that umbrella, and it's kicking the light so that I can get pretty even illumination from left to right. but there is one more thing to consider, is I can actually multitask, multi-purpose these two lights, not only to be a background light, but also to give me super subtle rim lights. And that's what I have today. I've angled them just a little bit back toward my subject, and so I'll get a little bit of spill of light on either side of her jawline. And so that's going to give just a little bit of separation on the side of the arms, maybe a little bit of shine to the hair. And so it just gives a little bit of extra polish without me having to add, an additional 2 more strobes as rim lights. All right, so let me show you what it looks like when I add 2 background lights. Okay, so let's take a look at the differences so far. Right now you can see that the background has become brighter. Now what's right or wrong? Like how bright should the background be? And there's no answer to this, just depends on what you're trying to achieve with the campaign. If you want something brighter and higher key, then you might go stronger on the background light. And in fact, I could turn these up so bright that I could get a pure white background. Now the other thing you'll notice is it is ever so subtle, but just a tiny bit of separation, a tiny bit of highlight on the side of her face. Okay, so that so far is showing you my commercial setup with 3 lights, and that's probably what I use most often, this setup right here. But I sometimes will add one more variation by giving myself the option of a fill light. In other words, sometimes I might want a look that's a little bit glowier, a little bit shinier, filling in the shadows. When I've done this in the past has been if the point of the shot is to be really shiny, maybe I'm showing off a highlight or a glowy, dewy skin, or if I'm photographing a subject that's a little bit older. By adding a fill light underneath and to the front, what it does is it fills in the shadows underneath the wrinkles, which makes them less noticeable. So there's several reasons you might want to add a fill light. Now this does sometimes get in the way of shooting full-length shots, but if you're focusing on 3/4 or beauty, I always add this in there, even if I'm not using it, but it gives me the option if it improves the image. Okay, so let me grab a shot with that strip softbox. If you compare this image and the previous one, what you'll notice is that the shadows underneath her jawline, as well as the shadows in the fold of the clothing, they have been lifted up, they've been lightened. Overall, the shot looks a lot glowier and shinier and higher key. So in looking at these, which one is the right one? Which one is better? And the point is there is no answer. It's about what your client is interested in. And so even though I don't necessarily need all 4 of these strobes, I'd like to set them up. I shoot several different images, give a lot of variations to my client to choose from, and then we dial it into their exact preferences, what fits the brand, what fits the campaign. Now that we have this beautiful lighting setup, I'm going to grab a shot. And so I'm going to direct the model's poses and expression and the way that she interacts with the camera based upon the brand that I'm advertising. Now, as I capture these images, I'm going to be shooting with the Canon R5 and the Canon RF 24-105. This too is the lens that I use most often for my commercial work because it gives me the most variability. I can shoot a full-length shot, then pop into a 3/4 shot, and then even a headshot, all in just a matter of seconds. And so I find that really important on set when time is money. All right, so let's get the shot. Okay, so can you pop up one knee, turn to your left for me? Beautiful. Through my years as a commercial photographer, one thing that I've realized is it's not about having a complicated setup. It's not always about more is more. It's about planning ahead with your client, figuring out what they're trying to achieve, and being able to give them that control over their image. And what I find is most of the time, nowadays, this lighting setup is doing the trick. Now, if you want to see the gear used in the making of these images, be sure to check out the links in the description below. And if you're interested in money-making setups, be sure to check out my class as well. I do more than just a setup like this. I actually talk about headshots and personal branding and beauty photography. And so that class has lighting recipe guides, videos, and more. I'm glad you guys have joined me, and I will see you next time.